Hey everybody! What do you know about the Indian Wars in the United States? Yeah, if you're like me, nothing. In any event, there's a pretty historic site around here called the Dade Battlefield. According to Wikipedia, it was the beginning of the very longest and bloodiest of the Indian Wars. Things started when I guess it was the federal government, maybe it was the state government, passed a homesteading kind of rule where farmers could come to northern Florida. I didn't know this, but northern Florida is pretty agriculture. Apparently the soil is fairly good here. And as a result, was prized by, I guess, some of the settlers. And one of the governments, I believe it was the Florida state government, said if you come in and cultivate 5 acres of land and stay on it for 5 years, then it's yours. Of course, the problem with that is there were people who owned the land prior to that, and that was Seminole Indians. And around, I think, 1830, there was some kind of a treaty, I believe it was called Payne's Treaty, that was signed, that indicated that many of the chiefs signed that apparently to avoid this conflict, the Indians were to be, the Native Americans, I guess I should be calling them, were to be resettled west of the Mississippi in the what was then the Oklahoma territories, where I'm not too sure. Many of the chiefs agreed to this, but the chief around here of the Seminoles did not, and as a result there was a pretty, as I say, catastrophic battle for the United States troops. So here I am at the Dade Visitor Center, about to go inside and take a look to see what all they have to offer, what kind of information they have. It'd be really great if they had a little video presentation about the battle and some of the historical importance and context for it. So come along and we'll see what's going on. Well, I just finished a 12-minute video on Dade's battle, and it was really good. It was short, but it gave me lots and lots of information, and if you're in the area, please stop by. Make sure you go to the Visitor Center. It's open every day, I think from 8:30 until sunset, and it just gives you so much context and history about the battle, what brought it about, and the consequences. And I met a young park ranger by the name of Jordan who gave me all kinds of information and suggestions as far as the walking trail is concerned. Had I had the presence of mind, I should have really videotaped him, and he's a lot more interesting than I am. So in any event, thus far I'm fairly impressed. It's quite a story. The first and second, I guess this was the start of the Second Seminole Wars. And from what I understand, it lasted 7 years, and eventually, of course, the Seminoles were moved out of the area and on into Oklahoma, and it cost the federal treasury about $40 million. You can imagine way back then, that was today, that's a lot of money. One of the things that I didn't really understand or know that I learned in the film is that the black slaves who were able to escape plantations, they knew that if they could get into Seminole territory, the Seminoles would accept them as brothers, and they became members of the tribe and were really integrated into Seminole life. With the Seminole Wars coming to an end, those black slaves who had enjoyed freedom for who knows how many years were brought back into slavery, and it would be another 20 years before the dignity of blacks and certainly the inhumanity of slavery of any kind would be settled in this country. So that's an interesting piece of information I had no idea about. So I'll take some pictures as I enjoy the walk, and I'm going to follow Ranger Jordan's suggestions and start down here to my right. So take care and come along. There was a road that had been constructed that was about 20 feet wide from Fort Brooke, which was on Tampa Bay, to Fort King, which was in Ocala. And it went right through Seminole territory, and the U.S. Soldiers had been warned. The Seminoles had told them, not to transgress, come into their territory, there would be trouble. And that's exactly what happened. Apparently the troops coming up from from Tampa Bay into Ocala were supposed to meet in Fort King with some troops that were coming down from the north, and they were to gather there, and I guess at that point maybe some kind of an aggressive campaign against the Seminoles. The Seminoles knew of the plan and were hiding in and around this field just as you see it today. Major Dade died in the first volley of gunfire when the Seminoles surprised the U.S. Army soldiers. They had stealthily observed the troops as they marched toward Fort King, and they were nearly 2/3 of the way there. The Seminoles were delaying because one of their chiefs was to arrive and actually lead the campaign. However, he was delayed. And the remaining chiefs who were with the Seminoles had determined that if they wait much longer, they'll lose their advantage and the soldiers will make the trip. So they began the fight right after dawn on, I believe it was the 23rd of December in 1932. And Major Dade, as I said, fell almost immediately, as did a couple of others of his officers. What happened was they finally got a couple of the cannons that they had with them turned around and were firing on the Seminoles, which caused them to retreat. And during that retreat, the Army soldiers had a chance to kind of try to fortify themselves. They felled some trees, trying to build a bit of a blockade or a barricade, and they kind of got behind that, which in essence penned them in. And the Seminoles then regrouped and just attacked that barricade. And in the end of the day, my information tells me that only 3 U.S. soldiers remained alive. 2 of them went back to Fort Brooke in Tampa, and I believe only 6 Seminole Indians died during the attack. So it was very much a lopsided victory. The dead of the battle lay here unburied for 7 weeks until General Gaines brought down an expedition to bury the dead and give them military honors. The battle shocked the nation, and although the Seminoles won the battle, there's no question of that, President Jackson at the time, who was no friend of Native Americans and determined to move the Seminoles to the Oklahoma territories, had the excuse and the results of the battle here as an aid to begin what, as I said before, became the most costly and longest of all the Indian Wars. Many, many men and millions of dollars were spent ultimately in a war that the Seminoles could not win. And unfortunately, as a result of their losing this particular territory in this particular battle, this particular war, many freed black Americans who had sought refuge and found freedom with the Seminoles were recaptured and taken into bondage again. So it's a tragedy of American history, there's no doubt about it, and one that certainly I knew nothing about. So I'm awfully glad that I took the opportunity to get here, take a look at it. It's not a big battlefield. You can do it in the space of an hour or so, including the little visitor center and museum. And I highly recommend that you see the 12-minute video. It's pretty well done and gives you some background on the whole situation here. So thanks for coming along. Hope you enjoyed it and you found it as informative as I did. And I'll see you next time.